thinking a lot about invisible contracts lately. Invisible contracts that we have, that we kind of develop with others, right? If this sounds familiar, maybe not, I don't know. But for me, it's something I'm really trying to work on in my recovery. I think people should know what I want. They should just understand that this is probably the way I would like to do it, the schedule I would like, and I've discussed many times, I am neurodivergent, and so I'm kind of at a late diagnosis one as well, so I'm kind of coming to terms with some of this stuff. And for me, at least, I feel like I spend a lot of time going out of my way trying to figure out what other people are going to feel comfortable with. And sometimes I expect that level consideration is going to come back, right? But who am I to say that it's not? I've been thinking a lot about invisible contracts. Mother's Day is coming up. I'm a mom, well, not obviously necessarily, but I've talked about it. And, things are a little strained. Doesn't need me, doesn't think that I know too much, and I get it, I've been that age before. But I found myself having this conversation earlier today, kind of an imaginary contract, like, well, better reach out soon and make plans, because otherwise, and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, wow, Tiff, okay, slow down. Let's slow down a sec. But I found myself getting worked up, and honestly, I think it was because I saw some stupid commercials talking about Mother's Day. And then my mother asking me what I'm doing for her for Mother's Day. So anyway, invisible contracts, perfect topic. When we're looking at something as complex as our family unit, our original family, in context with our own interaction with that unit and interaction with, the whole world, right? Having my little humble talk with myself, that I felt like I was coming from a sense of entitlement. Like I was entitled to time. I was entitled. 30 hours plus a labor, come on, where are my goodies, right? But that, right there, that comes from entitlement. Now, why do I feel entitled to that? Why do I feel entitled to access to the Mother's Day plans a week in advance, right now? Why is that important to me, right? Well, I was feeling a little lonely, And I looked up this article, and it was in Psychology Today. I'll cite the source at the end. It talked about the social influences, right? Me seeing the commercial, that kind of triggered it. And also, sense of entitlement is very common in people that have either been raised by someone who is narcissistic personality disorder or is one themselves. So, because what do we think of when we hear someone who says, oh, you're a narcissist or you're narcissistic? Well, the sense of entitlement is kind of the hallmark thing. Like, I'm the greatest, you're the worst, right? Where do these things come from? They come from somewhere. They don't just appear in our little minds generally, right? I'm of the behavioral psychology school of thought more than anything. So childhood experiences being a big part of it, right? Now, you can develop a sense of entitlement a couple of different ways. And what's interesting is they can be absolutely opposite. You could be raised in a situation where you are spoiled as a child. Everything you do is amazing. And everybody loves you, and there's never any problems, and anything you want, you get. Right? That can lead to someone feeling entitled to the world treating them as special as their family did. Okay? The opposite, though, that can also generate an appearance of a sense of entitlement is like a terrible childhood where you have really low self-esteem, and so you feel like you've been wronged and that you've gotten a bad shake in life, and now you're entitled to what you want. So isn't that strange? How when we see people's behavior and we are having a conversation, it's very easy for us to say, oh, well, they have this, or they're like this. But of course we can't know that because we can't know why the behavior is their fallback. And with people who have an actual diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder, they're almost on a level that they are so unaware of other people that they just don't have empathy for them. They're really just wholly, circularly focused on themselves. the opposite of that is just being so terrified and so insecure that you feel that you have to protect yourself at all costs. Some of the things that can play into this too, if you have childhood experiences where the parents that were raising you or your family unit, there was a lack of boundaries. Lack of boundaries is a big one. Because when we as parents, and I'll keep it on me, when we as parents interrupt our children's boundaries, when they're younger, you know, when they get into the teenage years, they deserve privacy. But when we don't honor our children's boundaries and we demand the attention right now, or I'm whipping that door open and you're talking to me this moment, right? And we don't let them have any autonomy for themselves, we're saying to the child, we're entitled to you. I'm entitled to you whenever I want. I'm entitled to you. I own you. You're mine. You have to do what I say, you know? And to a certain extent, yes, the child does. If the child wants to continue to be loved and fed and supported in the family, yeah, I mean, they've got to go along with it, right? I mean, who wants to risk that? No one wants to be rejected or excommunicated from their family. I got kicked out of my family a bunch of times. And then they would, bring me back. Mostly because I'm fun at parties. Everybody else is kind of a buzzkill. Just saying. In the article, I disagree a little bit. They're like, well, social media has made it really seem like people can have these lavish, wealthy lifestyles without much work. Yeah, but I think that was always there. I think all movies are like that too. I don't know if anybody's as much of a movie nerd as I am, but whenever I see like a single woman out in the woods in a beautiful cabin on a lake by herself, I'm like, what did that broad do to be able to afford that? That's what I want to know, right? But the other flip side of it is extreme self-loathing, extremely poor self-esteem, and you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. And so then you constantly feel like you're getting the short end of the stick and you're not getting the stuff. And that leaves you feeling more entitled. It can, right? Other factors, feeling that you have been dealt a bad hand. Now, this is one I have to talk about for myself, because if you come from a background or had experienced any kind of medical trauma, physical, emotional, blah, 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 whatever it may have been in childhood, it's hard not to feel like you've been dealt a bad hand, right? But I know for myself that I have to interrupt those feelings, those grudges. That's what I need to call it. It's a grudge. Because there's nothing that can be changed about it. And even if the people that I perceive wronged me, and if they had an epiphany and suddenly confessed and said, oh my God, Tiffany, you were so right and I was so wrong, and how could I have ever been so blind? That would be great. But unlikely. And so I'm left with the grudge. I'm the one carrying the grudge. That's why they call it carrying a grudge. Because it takes work. But yeah, feeling you've been wronged, overlooked. You end up harboring resentment. And resentment is one word for it, but I would say underneath that's also fear. You're resentful because, and we've talked about it many times, but in a capitalistic society in which we exist, when others are rewarded with good jobs, nice home, nice family, money, a boat, vacation trips, we can very easily fall into the trap of envy and resentment, and stemming from fear. It's stemming from fear, at least for me, that maybe the reason why I'm not getting any of that stuff is because I don't deserve it. Maybe I don't. Maybe they are better than me. Maybe they are all better than me. And then where am I? I mean, because if we're not comparing ourselves to each other, well then, if I'm not better than someone, what am I? It's easy to get, and it's not like we do that consciously. At least I don't. But all we can kind of do is when, for me at least, a lot of my feelings start in my stomach first, Or I feel like I'll wake up in the morning and I almost want to cry. And I don't know why. Like, I wake up choked up, like and I'll just have to, like, ask myself, like, what are you ruminating on? What are you ruminating on? And a lot of times it's, it's loneliness, it's fear, it's did I make the right decisions? Should I have gone to a different college? Should I have married a different man? Should I have dyed my hair? Should I have not dyed my hair? Should I cut my bangs? I mean, like, you just, right? What if? It won't help. It won't help. If what if behavior was going to help, at least me, it would have helped by now. So, okay. Circling back to the aspect of narcissism, one of the reasons why, if one of your caregivers are having a narcissistic personality disorder, I am here to tell you, more than likely, you will never get the satisfaction of them getting a diagnosis because, generally speaking, if you have that disorder just makes you think you're always right. In essence, you're just always right. And if you're not right, then that's because someone else is wrong, or you're going to make them wrong, right? So when we're having resentment towards children, we're having envy towards children, the psychological factor, if there is that narcissism, and we all have narcissistic traits and behaviors at times. That does not mean that we have a diagnosis of this. There are real measurable things that go into that diagnosis. It's not just, you didn't call me back in time on a Saturday night. But a narcissist, if that's the situation, they can only really see their image on to the child. They don't actually see the child. The child doesn't really exist other than the extension of the parent. It's like an arm of the parent. And that's why they get incredibly upset if you do not act in the way that they want their right arm to act. Anyway. Other reasons why we can maybe feel a little nutty about this and resentful towards our children: insecurity on our own part, low self-esteem, and viewing our child as a rival. Yeah. And in these toxic family dynamics, it happens. Bowen's family theory, when he talks about the concept of triangulation is essentially a dyad is a relationship of two people. And there's the most tension in a two-person relationship. So if the tension is getting too high between the two parties, they will bring in a third one. They will triangulate in a kid, a best friend, a therapist, a pastor. Now, it's not always bad that someone triangulates someone and to try to work out the tension between the two. But if this is coming from a toxic family dynamic, that rivalry, that resentment, if the parent, and I think it's very likely to happen more so not in the parent that is the direct narcissist, but the codependent parent on that narcissist. And when they see the narcissist praising the child around them, and the child and that parent seem closer together, and the other person, the nurturer, the caregiver, feels cornered out, triangulated out, it's devastating. And if you're not ready to process the fact that your primary relationship is where it's really stemming from, you can inadvertently start resenting your kid and seeing your child as your own rival to your relationship, which is really dangerous. But also really, really normal, especially if you were raised in a high conflict or a toxic family environment. And why would that be so? Well, contrast. Seeing that, for me, I felt like, at least my motivation was, other people's opinions may vary, but I really wanted my child to have a relationship with their father better than I did. One that completely different relationship than what I had with my father. And I remember many times watching them get along and play and love, and I'm sitting on the couch and I want to cry. It's like, well, I never got that. Oh, I wish I could just ask for a hug. I never could have. Who would hug me? You know? They'd be like, what do you want? So, because there's that contrast. And it's comparison again. And comparison comes from fear. Fear we're not good enough. Fear we're not worthy of love. Fear we're not worthy of whatever it is that we think we're missing, or whatever it is that we're working on or towards. But so I encourage you, if you end up feeling some of those feelings around Mother's Day, and maybe you are grieving the childhood you didn't have, the relationships you didn't have, or maybe the relationships you don't have anymore because those parents have passed, or they are estranged from your life. You know, estrangement's rough. I'm estranged from family members, and it's absolutely devastating around the holidays, you know, because you want it to be easier than that. You want it to be different than that. But it isn't. It isn't. So then what are you going to do? There's a movie, it stars Al Franken, the writer for Saturday Night Live and former senator for Minnesota. But he has this character called Stuart Smalley, who is a self-help guy. It's a guru. And there's a movie and you got to buy it like on DVD. It's so great. But one of his sayings is, he's like, you can't carpet the world, but you can wear slippers. Okay? So let's make sure we're putting on our slippers. We can't change the world. We can't carpet it. We can't change what's going on out there. We can't change what happened in the past. But we can wear slippers. If any of these things are kind of triggering for you, or you're looking for something to maybe journal on or help process any feelings this talk might have brought up, here's some considerations. Use these feelings as a catalyst to begin your own grieving process of what you didn't receive. And that can be journaling, dance, singing, whatever. Start grieving, being proud of yourself that you're trying to break the cycle as hard as you can and give your child what you didn't get. You're trying to be the opposite of selfish, right? You're trying to be the opposite of being entitled. And so when those negative feelings come up, you know, it's hard to process. But if you end up feeling that way, it's probably because you care. Because you care so much. But if you're constantly making those decisions based from your own fear that your child's childhood would be as terrible as yours, again, you're operating from fear too. And so you've got to go back and you've got to give some love to that little kid. And remember, whatever you did to survive, you did it. You know? We're all just really a series of coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms. And these things can be really icky and not fun to unpack. But if you've ever felt like, I don't know why I'm feeling these feelings towards my child, I'm their mother, I feel shame even admitting it or whatever. Don't. I've felt that way many times. You know, I'm sure, and I'm sure dads feel it that way too. You know, especially at the beginning when the baby needs everything, and then the dad gets triangled out. It's the baby and the mom, and then the dad's like, "Well, I'm just a piece of meat now, and I just make the money and come home and have to go and do all the errands and all the not fun stuff." And I get it, you know, it's not easy. So, well, hopefully that helped. But one more time, I just want to mention again, I will not be on next Sunday because I am producing a comedy show, and I'll probably be pooped after that. Be pooped. We'll see. Stay centered, everybody. Have a great week, and then I will actually see you in 2 weeks. All right. Take care.